Good evening. It's Saturday night at 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in to UCY.tv. This is Kim Ochelli, your host for the next 2 hours on Jaded. Just wanted to say real quick before we bring Mr. Ford back in that forgive me because I was watching CNN, but they had the heroes of the year. And if that doesn't inspire you to be a better person the way this world is now, then I don't know what will. These people, what they do for others who are in need and who are down on their luck or whatever the case may be, I don't know. It just made me feel a little bit better with all the crap that's going on in the news lately. Anyway, you want to bring in Mr. Ford?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Carryover from my show, this is Chuck, everybody. Hi. Oh, okay.
Hey.
Carryover from the Ochelli effect. Mr. Ford has stuck around a little bit, so again, if you guys want to call in, 718-717-8296. You can talk to Mr. Ford directly if you like. And of course, if you're on my Skype list, I will just add you right on in the call. Not a problem. Okay, because Kim is using my Skype. So, Mr. Ford. Yeah. Sorry you had to wait through all that, but, we got to do our thing.
Hello, Mr. Ford.
Yes. Yeah, good evening, Kim.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you at the table.
And a pleasure to meet you for the first time.
Thank you. You too. I was listening for a little while when I wasn't with the baby, and I tell you, your story is fascinating and a real eye-opener to those of us who are kind of new to the way this government is. Being myself, I'm a little new. I lived under a rock for a while, and I admit I was one of the people with my head down, not paying attention, but now I'm paying attention, and I'm very unhappy with what I hear and what I see every day.
See, and listening to Mr. Ford, you can understand why it is I use terms like, the Bush crime syndicate, and stuff like that, right? I mean, you see exactly what I'm talking about, and of course, it strains the imagination, and you brought up an important point a couple of times during the show, that, it's kind of really a miracle in and of itself that they allowed you to survive. I would have thought they would have tried to, they've tried to marginalize you also.
Yes, right, you bet.
And but it is amazing that you actually survived, and I'm glad that you did, because otherwise we would have probably nobody telling us that that there were actually weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that the that the Bush family is directly involved in this whole cover-up. As I said, I thought for a very long time that it was the deception of, there's really no weapons there. Now you see them, now you don't. Everybody plays the clip of W making the jokes about trying to find them, almost playing hide-and-seek with a podium, regarding these weapons of mass destruction. And it actually, based on what you've said and what you've asserted in court, I mean, both, it's like even more repulsive and ridiculous what's gone on here.
Well, when I went off to Iraq, I was like everybody. Terrorism, no our country, no our politicians, no George Bush would not do what they've done. They just wouldn't do it. It was beyond comprehension for me, even though, like I say, I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but, you saw in my records that my first job in the military, when I was working with the Coast Guard, the U.S. Coast Guard, I was on security for, and I'm going to date myself here, President Nixon, Richard Nixon. Okay, that was my first job in the military. I was 18, all right, at the time. Mm. And so, I've spent my whole life being assigned to special forces units, intelligence units, everything like that, and where it's unquestioned that we're doing the right thing, that we're doing good things in the world. And for the most part, I had seen good things being done in the world. There's no question. I mean, everything from building hospitals, to helping people in medevacs. I participated and been directly responsible for it. But I never thought for 1 second that I would see the sinister, brutal, ruthless, mercenary business practices that I have seen that has been connected directly to the Bush family machine, the Bush crime family. Period. There's nothing. I never thought I'd see it, but now I have.
And that's saying a lot, considering we're talking about Nixon, who was involved in the madman strategy, as it were. Bombing the people of Cambodia as viciously as he did, and everything else. I mean, that's horrendous enough, but realistically, it's nothing compared to what's gone on since. I meant to ask you this question before, actually. What did you do precisely regarding security for Nixon?
Okay, I was on his security team. There were 2 boats, okay, that guarded all the offshore and beachfront, okay, in front of his home, and that was at San Mateo Point in San Clemente, California. Okay, and I was on a boat called the Point Divide. All right, there were 2 boats, the Point Hobart and the Point Divide. And so when you saw pictures, when President Nixon was there, flew in on Air Force One, and flew into his home, you could see us there on station right offshore. So we provided all the ocean security and beach security.
Okay. Well, I was curious about that because as we all know now, Nixon was native to Whittier, California, and of course retired to California when he left the presidency, as it were. Of course, interesting intrigue with the intelligence agencies even back then.
I was actually there at San Clemente when he announced. Okay, we were sitting on the boat. Okay, and we had the officer of the watch run in and say, "Oh, here it is." Here, and he turned on the TV, and we actually watched from San Clemente. We watched President Nixon resign. The first time in history that had ever happened. So that's where I was. That was my first job. Okay, with the military. So.
When you were taken against your will, were you in contact with your family before that? Were you able to call them and speak to them?
I don't have a family to call or contact, so that wasn't the issue. No, I made the contact for my lawyer. That's who I called.
Okay, so he's the only one that knew you were gone.
Yes,
probably saved his life. In fact,
yeah, I contacted my attorney at the time, Kevin Healy, and who had been a former JAG officer, Judge Advocate General officer, and I contacted him and said, "This is what's going on." And he listened for about 30 seconds, and he said, "Greg, either you're nuts, or this is at the eve of one of the greatest war crimes, in U.S. history." And I said, "That's fine, Kevin. They're going to strap me to a damn stretcher and shoot me full of horrendous drugs very shortly here. You better get a hold of the Office of the Adjutant General, okay, in California at the headquarters," and which he did. He immediately did. Imagine a lawyer doing what you tell him, okay, without taking a retainer first, okay. But he actually did, and he contacted Tom Ayers, General Ayers, and told General Ayers. He said, "Look," he said, "my client's in Iraq. This very bad thing is happening." And General Ayers contacted Stanley McChrystal, okay, General McChrystal. I think everybody knows who he is now. And General McChrystal called the command and said, "Look, catching too much heat from behind. Okay, this guy better not show up in a body bag." And he said that to my commander. Okay, so that's how. If I hadn't been able to contact my lawyer, I probably wouldn't be here giving you this story.
Wow. Yeah, that's the reality. There is that if they had nobody else looking, from the outside in, you would have been in a whole lot more trouble. They might have actually dispatched you out that door on the back of the transport, like you were talking about, because they usually silence guys like you.
Well, they call that now being Pat Tillman. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's in Pat Tillman, who was shot, right, the famous football player, right?
Right.
Okay. That's what happened to him. Okay. I mean, he was shot from 5 feet away with 3 rounds to the forehead. Okay. Because he was keeping journals of what was going on, all the brutality that he saw and so forth, and he was fed up. He was fed up. He was headed out of the system as soon as he could, and of course everybody knows the rest of the story there. But the irony is that it was Stan McChrystal who ordered the cover up. General McChrystal ordered the cover up in the Tillman affair. So yes, no, death by friendly fire isn't uncommon. Fratricide is not uncommon, and it was. In fact, when we went into Iraq, more people were killed the first month by friendly fire than by the enemy. So, so one intelligence agent catching a bullet in the back of the head, wouldn't have caused any kind of consternation.
Well, right. Plus, they could have filed it under something that I forget the exact terminology, but I think it's something like death by misadventure.
It's called accidental discharge.
Oh, accidental discharge, right. So they could have just given you an accidental discharge and opened up the back of your head. Again, you had somebody on the outside.
In my court documents, you notice the declaration is yes, they took my gun immediately, okay, and there I was, helpless, okay, and they had known that I'd done some time with Special Forces, so then they came back. These jokers came back. These are all the defendants now that you've read about in my case. Then they demanded my knives. I had 2 knives, and they were worried about me doing something with a knife to them, okay. Actually, if I thought about what was it, rehydrolyzed rectally, I would have done something with them like that. Yeah, I think that would have been a great idea. But they took my knives from me, and so there I am in a war zone, in an active combat zone with no weapon. Okay, because they're busy trying to cover up war crimes. All right, so that was a pretty good. That was their chance to have me killed. As I said, by accidental discharge. So.
Well, did they do any of the type of torture that they're talking about now? Did they do any of that to you, or did they just drug you and leave you in a stupor?
Oh, yeah. Well, good luck doing anything like that to me. Okay. The only way that they could have gotten, do what they did was because I was strapped down to a stretcher. Okay,
right.
I couldn't move. Yeah. I'd love to see the person, try to slam me up against the wall or put me into a stress position. Oh, yeah, right. Good luck. All right. And that wouldn't have happened. And they knew it. Okay. That's why they had to get me on a stretcher, forcibly get me on a stretcher, and then shoot me full of mind-altering drugs.
Yeah, that was the thing. We covered that during the last show, that he had, been shot up with the sodium amytal series, which has terrible consequences. Actually, caused all sorts of neurological damage, which they were fully aware of. But they utilized it to interrogate him. They did interrogate him for sure. But regardless, being strapped down and
by your own people
and drugged out, being snatched first of all, but being disarmed, snatched, then drugged, then interrogated. All of that all together is just, it's absolutely unheard of. And as I mentioned on the previous show also, this is the only guy to ever have been renditioned, which I hate. And survive. But I hate that term anyway, because it's a kidnapping is what it is. It's forcibly taking somebody against their will, and it's abduction.
Forcible abduction, right? Absolutely. Right. There's no question. Now, in this situation, okay, and I need to point out, and this is interesting because this just came up legally, is that the first thing they said was, the first drug they shot me up with. And unfortunately, since I'm a doctor, I know exactly the effects of what they were attempting to do. And so they shot me full of diazepam. It's actually the generic name is Valium. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you never give Valium. There's a reason why Valium is the world's #1 #1 suicide drug. You take Valium, and when I was doing my medical training in Miami-Dade County, at the famous Dr. G medical examiner, that's where I did my medical training, for forensics, and like 4 out of 5 suicides that were coming in were Valium connected. And so the first thing that this miserable excuse for a psychiatrist did, who was supposed to be protecting me, she was supposed to be protecting me from this kind of treatment. She was actually aiding and abetting, all right? By the way, that was Merle Madera, and Merle Madera has now left the United States, and she is in the Philippines, last time they checked, because of my case, all right? And so she injected me, and I told her, I said, you know what you're doing, and you know that this is a court-martial offense, and when I get back, that's the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that you lose your license, all right? I told her that. And of course, so she, like most officers in the military, when they're in this kind of position, it's like, oh, yeah, we'll see. And so anyway, shot me, one of the issues of diazepam, Valium, liquid Valium, is if it's given in conditions of extreme high stress, which that was, being forcibly abducted usually induces high stress.
I would think so.
It also induces panic and hysteria. It's contraindicated in every sense of the word, but I'm absolutely sure that's the kind of condition she was hoping that it would induce in me. Okay, and I knew it. I knew that was the side effect, so I was being very careful not to do anything that would give anybody watching, an excuse. Okay. Oh yeah, he was out of his head. He was nuts. He was crazy. Yeah, they were justified. Yeah, I saw him with my own eyes. Yeah, he was nuts. And in fact, not everybody's a moron and a half-wit. Okay, and I only went to war with the half-wits. Okay, the Keystone Cops, as they say, of intelligence. Was my group. The Air Force people, they knew on the plane that I was on, they knew something was up, and they tried to intervene several times. Okay, they knew something bad was happening, and they tried to intervene. Okay.
Did anything happen to them for trying to intervene?
Well, that's why there were 2 psychiatrists along. Okay, masquerading as doctors. Is they said, they basically told them, look, don't try to interfere again, or we'll have you charged. Okay, and the Air Force people, like I said, are usually cut above everybody else in terms of all the other militaries, and they kept trying. They kept saying, they kept demanding explanations about what was happening. Okay, and because it was a medical evac plane, all right, and so there were other wounded people there, but the Air Force people had seen what happened on the tarmac, because I almost came to blows with both psychiatrists. Okay, and they actually went over and said and demanded that 4 MPs come over and physically slam me onto the stretcher. Okay, because I told them, hey, I'm not playing this game. I'm not leaving this country like this. Not because you guys want to cover up war crimes. I'm not leaving like this. And well, guess what? They grabbed me and they slammed me down on the stretcher. MPs are basically overgrown high school dropouts with guns. So MPs are military police, by the way, for your listeners.
Right. And isn't there also an issue, though, with the sodium amytal interacting with the diazepam?
Oh, sure. Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Something as ferocious as sodium amytal, who knows what it'll do to your brain? For the longest period of time, after I got back, I had the most hideous nightmares that were all beyond description. Okay, beyond description. And I'm sure it was connected to the use of sodium amytal. And I've been evaluated by about 4 different panels of doctors, and they said very clearly, they knew my education, they knew my experience, they knew what I was capable of, and they said very clearly I'd suffered damage, brain damage. So, and that was 4 different panels of people. So, okay. So anyway, yes, that was a going away gift, by my command, for reporting something that by law I was required to report and deal with. So,
Well, I'm sure it's been brought up on one of the times you were on with Chuck, but how long were you kept against your will that way? I didn't know how long it was.
Okay. I'm estimating, I'm estimating the time to be about 4 hours. Maybe five, something like that. Okay, because I was on a plane, and we were flown through German airspace, and like I say, that is a high crime of state, what was done to me in German airspace. There's no question about it. And the Germans suspected that it was going on, but that was about 4 hours to German airspace. So, like I say, I came to and literally cut myself out of the straps and nut myself up. And oddly enough, I was all by myself in the back of the plane. Nobody around, nobody watching me. I mean, here I've been shot full of these hideous drugs, but nobody was there in attendance. And I strongly suspect that Madeira, the captain, both captains and Captain Bowers, were up front dealing with the German authorities that were demanding to know if anybody was on that plane against their will. Okay, I strongly suspect that. So anyway, but it was really nice to see green. I hadn't seen green in months, and I looked out of the plane and saw Spain, and then Germany, of course, France, and then Germany. So it was really nice to see green. Okay, so I knew when I looked out, and saw Europe, I thought, hey, I've made it. I'm not going to be killed. That's what I expected, was to be thrown out the back. It's a very odd feeling that you have when here you did the right thing, and you've done the right thing. You're obeying all the laws, and the very people that they're supposed to have your back in a combat in a war zone are busy doing this to you. You can't imagine how I felt. Okay, so and then they have the U.S. Attorney's Office say, "Oh well, we didn't do anything wrong." Yeah, see, because it wasn't done on U.S. soil. Actually, it was, but in those terms, you can't imagine the sense of betrayal that I felt. I still feel. Okay, there's no question about that.
Well, who do you hold personally responsible for doing this to you? This was a question brought up in the chat room. Do you think it was orders from the White House, or just your commanding officer deciding that this is what should be done to you?
Oh, well, now you put it that way, Kim. There's no question. There's no question that the orders had to have come down from Donald Rumsfeld himself. And if you want to type in the name Thomas Pappas, Pappas, okay, he was my ultimate. He made the ultimate decision, even though he was operating in a rogue fashion. Okay, he could have gone to prison if Brigadier General Janice Karpinski, who everybody knows now, okay, if she'd been aware of what was happening, she could have court-martialed the entire group of officers that had done this to me. And as she said just the other day, she would have done it in a split second. All right, because of all the problems that have caused her. If you type in her name, you'll see it. She's very famous now as a result of this episode. All right.
She actually had her star taken away at one point. Now it's been restored, right?
Yes, she did. And don't think she took it well either. Okay. And she made the declaration in court. You didn't see her declaration, I don't think, but in court, she made the declaration that states that yes, this was an entire rogue operation, and had been done without her express command permission. Okay, without her express order, and the entire group should be brought back on active duty orders right now, 10 years later, right now, and slammed in a general court-martial and sent to prison. Every single one of them. So,
do you worry about your safety now when you go out?
Oh, well, put it this way. If they gave the job to do me in to the imbeciles I went to war with, I'm not worried. Okay.
Okay.
Not at all. Okay.
All right.
All right. Now, if they gave the job to, say, somebody like a Mossad or somebody like that, oh yeah, I would be worried. But, I can't spend the rest of my life worrying about it. Okay, and one reason why I do this court action, and I'm taking the government. It's the government that I'm taking to court. Okay, in spite of their protestations and carryings on and so forth, is that's why I'm taking to court. Is the fact that if I do shut up, as Joe Wilson from Valerie Plane, Joe Wilson and Valerie Plane, the Planegate issue, he said, Greg, if you stop talking, these people don't forget, okay, and especially when they're endangered by what you do and say. And he said they'll come for you, okay. So you have to keep talking, you have to keep communicating, okay. And so that's what I'm doing. So hence your show, Chuck and Kim. You know, that's why I'm talking as a result.
No, and I do see that, and that's absolutely true. Is that the moment that you go silent is the moment you're actually in danger, because you can disappear in that silence. That's really the bottom line. You know, and I think that you know, I'm really glad that you're willing to come on with us and discuss all this, because you know, I think that people don't actually recognize you know, they watch all this stuff being played out on television, you know, right next to the Bill Cosby rape story, you know, and all of this other stuff that really has nothing to do with what's really going on in the world. Meanwhile, you know, your story is not really about 2003. It's not about, you know, a few years ago. It's not about over a decade ago. It's really about what's still going on, what's still being conducted, you know, out in the field and among individuals who are being irrespectively dishonorable to their own chains of command, even. You know, General Karpinski is an example of that. There is somebody that I believe was not informed, you know, about what was going on. But it is curious that you do trace it all the way to Rumsfeld directly, and I'm wondering, because I know that you had at one point mentioned that before, why is it that you believe that it came straight from Rumsfeld exactly?
Well, you know, the irony of all this is when I get back, I immediately demand my military records, okay, my government records, okay. I want my government records. I still don't. That was years ago. How many years ago was that? 10 years ago? And I still don't have my military records, all right? My military records have disappeared. They probably disappeared before I even got back to the continental United States, okay? And with that in mind, okay, what do I do now? All right, what can I say? You know, how can I deal with this? And first of all, this situation should never have come about. But fortunately, I was able to get some good researchers, and I ended up with a stack of documents, besides my own history, okay, a stack of documents, okay, approximately 10,000 documents, and 700 pounds worth of documents, okay. Now, the U.S. Attorney's Office does not want to see these documents in the courtroom, okay, but several of the documents were concerned with the investigation of what happened to me. And until you've seen, I'm sorry, there's a buzzing going on in the background. I don't know what that is. Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear. I hear you just fine. It's very clear on this end.
Oh, okay. You can't hear that buzz?
No.
Okay, it just shut off. Okay. All right, that's probably NSA. Okay.
Yeah, it probably is. They're listening in. They want to hear everything.
Okay.
Well, we probably made some sort of key phrase here come together so that you know.
Okay. Yeah, it's been going on off and on, and that's what in the electronic intelligence they call that niche. That's called meakening, intrusion, jamming, and intercept. Okay. And when you get like a tone like that, that means that's like jamming. They're trying to jam the signal. Okay. That's what's going on right there. So, yes, and in fact, it's never happened on your show, Chuck, but it's happened like with Steve Roberts, where I had a beep on my phone, and I looked and there was you can't hear that right now.
No.
No.
Ooh, see, they're listening to you.
Oh, okay. And with Steve Roberts, and I got a message that said, "This information is not for private conversation." Okay, that's what the message, on text came through and said. So I was talking about, at the time when I got that message, I was talking about how the Bush family made their fortune on Cyclone B, which was used to gas millions of Jews in the concentration camps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was produced by I.G. Farben, and the royalties from those patents gave Prescott Bush and the Bush family their fortune. Everybody thinks that they made their fortune from oil and so forth. No, but I was discussing that, and the VX gas that the Bush family, Carlyle Group, ordered to be produced, okay, for the VX canisters, is about a 7th generation version of Cyclone B. And at the time when he said that, next thing you know, I get this intrusion notice, okay, from the NSA. So
right, and well, hey, look, I guess they're not so used to my show then, because quite honestly, I often bring up the fact that the Bush crime syndicate, as it were, traces back to Prescott Bush, who was called on the carpet for trading with the enemies. The Trading with the Enemies Act and all that other good stuff. This is out in the out in the public record at this point in time. People do ignore it, but even our own domestic policing agencies, namely the FBI, had brought them into the discussion regarding trading with Nazi Germany at the time that they weren't supposed to be. Of course, they've always been war profiteers and continue to be. This is where their real fortunes are made, and oil is a secondary means to an end in order to introduce themselves into other countries. That's all it's ever been. Despite the fact that W spent much of his young life drilling dry holes and things like this, really it was just something to keep the younger Bush busy, while the real deals were being made, right?
Well, yeah, no. I think George W. Okay, I think he was busy with somebody who did something very interesting to my investigation. Okay, that was Joe Schmitz. Okay, the Inspector General Joe Schmitz. Joe Schmitz is the son of Senator Joseph Schmitz. Okay, and the irony is that Joe Schmitz, who is the Inspector General of the Department of Defense, who ordered my investigations hidden, the results hidden in the University of Minnesota's own archives, okay? Joe Schmitz, his sister, and you might remember this case, and your listeners might remember this case, is Mary Kay Letourneau, okay? Does anybody remember Mary Kay Letourneau, the teacher that couldn't keep her hands off her student?
Yep.
And she ended up going to prison,
Yep.
over it? Okay, that's Mary Kay Letourneau. Her brother is Joe Schmitz, and they're the son of Senator Joseph Schmitz, who actually was removed from office because he tried to sever the penis of his 3-month-old son. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking some real healthy people here.
Apparently, wow.
Yeah, there is well beyond the legendary sickness, and the there is a whole bizarre nexus here, of just criminal activity, bizarre perversion, and things like this. And this is who is essentially, part of the American aristocracy, as it were. Like I said, we're still faced with the possibility of, puppet in chief Jed. This is amazing to me that this continues on, and the American public is really not that aware of it.
I'm going to move to a deserted island if that happens. I swear to God.
Well,
get in my rowboat and just start rowing. There's no way.
I'm also surprised that that you didn't feel the need to leave the country either, during all this. But I guess that would kind of make it impossible for you to continue with the legal action, right?
Uh-oh. I guess he's gone.
I'm not sure if we lost Mr. Ford.
Well, if anybody wants to call in at 718-717-8296, there's questions being asked in the chat room. You can call in. I don't bite yet.
it's definitely not a problem.
I hope
not
we're
sure
still
what
even
happened.
on.
You know,
Somebody tell me in chat if we're still on or not.
No, I believe we are still broadcasting, so, you know.
Even the chat room stopped, too.
Go ahead. Well, who knows? Maybe they're getting ready to kick the doors and...
Oh, the dogs aren't barking yet, so...
No, not yet. Not yet. You know, but all this stuff has been going on, you know, like I said, in the mainstream and among the alternative media regarding the torture issue, regarding the validity of it, regarding, you know, what has come to pass here. And just for all the nonsense earlier in chat, let me just say this really quickly. Dancing Israelis, dancing Israelis, dancing Israelis, okay? There. You guys happy? Look, I asked the guy about his ideas regarding Israel's involvement in 9/11. I did that. I continue on doing that. But I'm sorry, my mind is not just occupied with those people. I'm going to get further into what I call the rest of the empire in shows upcoming. By the way, we're gonna take on some pretty controversial stuff. So hold on to yourselves, because if you think that it's all Israel all the time, oh, you're missing a large part of the portrait.
Well, maybe that buzzing was them trying to hang up his phone. But while he's gone, there was the one thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm just going to say it. I don't know how many people agree with this, but I think this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about. So I'm switching gears completely, and I'm going into Generation Pussy. Okay? Because that's what's happening now. I looked on my Facebook, and I don't look that often now because I don't really have time, but there was a particular story that somebody had posted, and I won't name any names because I just won't. But their child has a particular diagnosis, if you will. And they must have had a show on South Park about it. Well, I'm going to have to tell you what it is, but it's Asperger's. And I guess these kids were watching South Park because the little kids were saying to this little boy, well, if you have Asperger's, that means you have burgers in your ass, right? So now all of a sudden we're going to have this sensitivity training because it hurt the little boy's feelings. Well, I'm sorry, but whatever happened to teaching a child conflict resolution instead of stepping in and taking care of it so the child doesn't have to deal with it? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We may have just added Mr. Ford back in. Can you hear us?
Yes. Did NSA just cut us off?
They may have. So
that was the weirdest thing, because it appeared as though you were still on the line, and you were gone.
Yeah, I was just speaking about the premise of how the Bush family was directly responsible for the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and the United States of America launched a war and invaded a sovereign country to find those weapons of mass destruction, and destroy those weapons of mass destruction, by the same family, who was responsible for those weapons. So that's what I was talking about, and the line went dead.
Right.
So there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear us?
I need to check.
No problem. You know what? We're probably going to have to check back and forth because, of course, you talked about the British intelligence agents actually having disposed of some of those weapons, which I find really curious, because that also indicates that there was complicity, among the whatever the hell number agencies over there regarding the very same things that our American assets were involved in too, huh? Okay.
Now, I'll give you a little episode of that. It's all pretty fascinating stuff, all said and done. Okay. When Dave and I located those weapons, we went and got Lieutenant Colonel Ryan, Timothy Drew Ryan, who is now working for the very same company that produced those weapons of mass destruction. Does anybody see a pattern? Anybody see a pattern here developing? Okay, I do. Okay, I saw, as much as you hate to see one when you're in combat, a pattern developing about not being able to trust the people that sent you to war in the first place. Yeah, I saw it forming there and starting there. But the irony is that Timothy Drew Ryan immediately raced over to the bunker and confirmed it, and I removed the dispersal door with the GSN number. Okay, the General Supply number. Okay, where how Chuck, you and Kim could actually order a weapon of mass destruction if you wanted, if you had this number. Okay, so it's all above board, of course. You know how bottom line is always money in this business here. So anyway.
Well, what amazes me about that, by the way, and this is something I don't remember if I brought it up to you the first time you said that, but I mean, the fact is, aren't these types of weapons actually not legal according to all sorts of conventions and treaties and accords across the planet? I mean, aren't these weapons supposed to be not in use? I mean, am I imagining something
absolutely. Here? Right. Yeah. No, you're not. Okay. These weapons were, first of all, George W. Bush likes to carry on. H.W. Bush. This is Poppy Bush. Remember the kinder, gentler Poppy Bush? Okay. And how all the troops from the first Gulf War, were supposed to have received like a bonus from Saudi Arabia and Kuwait for going, leaving their homes and incurring great financial debt to go fight, for the first Gulf War. And it was Poppy Bush who said, no, American troops won't accept that money because we don't send mercenaries around the world. I hope there's a special place in hell for people that can demonstrate hypocrisy. Because of that degree. That's almost indescribable, because he turned right around and made sure that worthless son of his got the Red Sea drilling rights, for his worthless oil company. As in George W. Bush, as in he had no idea what he was doing, but he all of a sudden got those mysterious leasing rights for those oil tracts. All right? So George H.W. Bush will not allow a bonus to be paid for every troop, and including not even having their student loans, deferred or paid off. They had to pay their own student loans. All right? That's what kind of people we're dealing with here. All right? And then of course, every document, the Great Bush Document Purge, well, the ones that they overlooked were the ones that were in the bunker with me, strapped to the cases of every single weapon of mass destruction, P-400, 1,000-pound converted bomb casing, that said, yes, these weapons were reconfigured in Fort Rucker, Alabama, shipped to Pine Bluffs, Arkansas, stored there, and then they were shipped via railhead to the Houston Waterway. Get it? Houston Waterway, as in George H.W. Bush, and loaded onto the Wabash and shipped directly to Iraq. Well, actually, they went to Spain and they airlifted into Turkey, and from Turkey they were trucked into Iraq. Now, it sounds like a mouthful, but surprise, they left the bills of lading on each case. That meant that was documentation that could be unrefuted, irrefutable, all right? And that was, the Great Bush Document Purge missed those documents. There they were, those documents that state very clearly that Carlyle Group ordered the manufacture of those weapons and the shipping of those weapons. Carlyle Group, as in George H.W. Bush, as in the Carlyle Hotel, in Washington, it can't be any more clear than that. And it was George H.W. Bush who authorized the manufacture of VX in the first place. Those weapons were not supposed to be produced, but it was George Bush with his lone vote, his single vote, that allowed those weapons to be produced and then shipped to the tender mercies of Saddam Hussein. And the U.S. Senate said, absolutely, do not ship these weapons. These weapons are offensive, in nature, They're not defensive weapons. They're only to be used in emergency defensive purposes. Period. Period. No, well, let's just see if we can mangle, the laws and what the Senate says and some bureaucratic nonsense. Okay? And so somehow, mysteriously, those weapons were shipped. And next thing you know, just Saddam Hussein, next thing you know, the 442nd fighter bomber wing was dropping those on the thousands of Kurds running for their lives to get away from that lethal, organophosphate mixture. And it killed them. It killed most of them before, in mid-step. That's how dramatic it was. Everybody remembers the Halabja campaign, and there it was. So there I am, looking at these weapons that are not supposed to exist. Okay, and I got all between my source, who was beaten to death, Abu Sager. I don't know if you type that name in, but it makes good reading, as you see all my official documentation too about his beating death by the CIA. The organ. It looks like they had organ failure on that interrogation, didn't they? A 75-year-old man, and I won't tell you about viewing his body. Okay, he actually hadn't died at that point, but viewing his body, he was barely breathing with his right eye bulging out of his head because he'd been hit so hard from behind in the back of his skull. Okay, so much for Abu Sager. Okay, my source, who had told me all about the finances, who said what, who did what, how they got those weapons, paid for and moved into Iraq. All right? So that was the first thing the CIA did, was get their hands on him and kill him. And after I was out of the way, they killed him. Right. And by the way, when I got back to America, here come agents. Here comes from different agencies. They all wanted to know about Abu Sager and what happened to him. Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the weird thing, too, because you and I talked off the air about the intermingling of the intelligence agencies because, you were not a CIA agent per se, but you had experiences with these guys, as well as the so-called, private contractors that were also involved in all this stuff as well. And by the way, guys...
They were in the same room. They were in the same room, Chuck.
Right.
Okay? Same room, all right? Not the same building, the same room, okay? Now, everybody thinks that when you say CIA, everybody just kind of gets these, hushed reverential tones, okay? Of like the great eye in the sky that, is omnipotent, okay? Hey, I hate to break it to the American people. No, they're not omnipotent. They're not anywhere near as capable as they and Hollywood want you to think, all right? And after seeing them in action, I'm even less impressed. I mean, they're an agency that has had too much money and virtually no oversight. If they had any oversight or any accountability like the House Committee on Intelligence and Collection is supposed to be doing, instead of hindsight, that's what we have now is a bunch of hindsight. Okay, yeah, we shouldn't have done this. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Okay. And we would not be in a position right now where we have to go begging for allies every time we do anything.
The problem is... I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, I was going to say, even the UK now doesn't want to go to war with us as a result. They've already made the announcement. They just can't afford any more disasters, like Afghanistan and Iraq. Okay? So here we are all alone facing ISIS, 5,000 hardcore, toughened fanatic. I'll take a small group of fanatics over a group of trained mercenaries anytime, and we'll see who prevails. Okay, I can tell you who will prevail. Can you imagine sending Blackwater in against ISIS? Oh, talk about an annihilation. Huh. Okay, and it ain't going to be ISIS that gets annihilated either. Okay, and ISIS now has, they're getting thousands of troops virtually every week. Hardcore, tough, ruthless, bloodthirsty, okay, troops coming in, joining them, and most of those are coming from our torture facilities, okay? Camp Buka, okay, that was only one of 12. 12 facilities And I know because I speak to General Karpinski. She had command of all facilities, okay? And Abu Ghraib. Abu Ghraib was hers, too. I know about what facilities, that these guys were kept at. And that's why they are so ruthless now.
Plus, we had the thing that disturbs me most about this is that our assets had a hold of the supposed leader of ISIS. We had a hold of just about every one of these guys who is at the front line of what's going on. In fact, you had utilized him, you had him as an asset at one point, personally. I mean,
yes.
This is the most... sorry, go ahead.
And the fact that they were in, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was in our control, working with us, and as soon as I leave, they throw him into a camp and torture him, and don't even find out that he had access and control of one of the largest intelligence computer database systems in the entire Middle East. They didn't find that out, and so that's why he doesn't make any decision now based on random selection. No, he knows exactly what he's doing. When he targets, when he orders his fighters to target a village, they know, or a town, they know exactly who in that town to kill and who not to kill. All right? They know exactly what the Syrians are doing because they work hand in hand with the Syrian Mukhabarat intelligence network. All right? I mean, there's a reason why they're so effective. It isn't because they're big and scary and they cut people's heads off on the internet. No, it's because they know exactly what they are doing, and they really, really want to fight another rematch with America. Oh, count on that.
Well, to go back to something you had said before about the CIA being overseen, there's really nobody who can oversee them because we can't trust anybody anyway. So to have somebody oversee them is kind of pointless because it's just more of the same.
Yeah, you're absolutely, Kim. Okay, and like I say, this roundtable, I assume that people are going to call in or put in questions and so forth.
I'm waiting.
But they keep saying things in the chat room, and I would love it if somebody wanted to drop in on the Skype or make a phone call. This would be great. I would be more than happy to entertain that, and I know you would too. So 718-717-8296. Call in or Skype in, either way, and we'll add you right on. And you can say whatever it is you want. We'll handle it. This is why, But I don't know. It's like it's a strange topic for people.
Well, we talk about controlling Kim, you talk about controlling the CIA. Well, what kind of control is there when the House Committee of Intelligence and Collection, which has oversight responsibilities of the CIA, is being spied on by the CIA? Okay? What kind of control is that? And when they get challenged on it, does anybody get fired? Okay? Does anybody go to prison when they get caught doing this?
No.
Tell me, if somebody went, have somebody call in and say, oh yeah, well, so-and-so went to jail over this for spying on the House Committee on Intelligence and Collection, the one that controls the CIA, controls the NSA, okay, controls DOD, intelligence, okay. Did anybody get in trouble? Or did they even get a, quote, strongly worded verbal admonishment over that? No, okay. As I think I said, Chuck, earlier, the response that the CIA is putting out right now as we're speaking, they're outraged and they're indignant over the investigation's results. When they formulated that and put that statement down, their response down? 18 months ago. That's when they put their statement down, how they're very angry and disappointed in the investigation results. Oh, please, cut it out. Worthless bunch of slug parasitic bureaucrats.
Well, what worries me is they're going to throw a lamb to the lion just as a scapegoat to say, oh, well, yeah, we're punishing somebody for this. And it would be some poor 22-year-old soldier who was just following orders. And not the people who are actually at the top giving the orders. And that's not right either. So it's a big
that's
giant
right, Kim.
ball of
Remember,
wrong.
I knew all those kids that went to prison at Abu Ghraib. Yeah, I knew all those kids. I knew those kids. Okay, and I'll tell you what. I demanded that I be allowed to speak at their court-martial. Do you think that they let me anywhere near that court-martial site? It was on the East Coast when they court-martialed. Okay, do you think they would let me anywhere near a court-martial, that room to tell, that courtroom to tell their commanders that, yes, I had notified the commanding officers that torture was going on and I had filed charges? They didn't let me anywhere near, okay, those rooms. Did you think they let those kids even testify in their own defense? No, you're right. And so you're right. Yes, they will. They will sacrifice somebody. If the heads are called for, they will sacrifice somebody. Okay, but it ain't going to be me strapped to a stretcher again. I'll tell you that right now for free.
No, and it's not going to be the people who are giving the orders either. It's going to be the poor kid that doesn't have a very good education, who just went in thinking he's serving his country, who's going to get it in the end, and that's a shame.
And it's also we've got new soldiers, new special forces, headed back. They're sitting in harm's way right now in Iraq at the Baghdad airport. They're headed into harm's way because now ISIS knows how to use those nuclear detonators. And do you think for 1 second that they're not going to use them on American forces or use them on Iran? These people that are listening better think again, okay? I mean, you can only stick your head in the sand so much before something drastic happens. And they got away with it. Let's face it. Our government and the Bush crime family, they got away with 9/11, okay? I don't think anybody would challenge that. They got away with it, okay? I mean, do you remember a golfer named Payne Stewart?
Oh, yeah.
His airplane went flying aimlessly.
Well, that happened about 3 months before 9/11, okay? And the irony is, I point out to people, and everybody says, "Oh yeah, God, why didn't I think of that?" His plane went off course by 2 degrees, okay, because everybody was dead because the oxygen system failed, and so his plane went off, course 2 degrees. Within 15 minutes, there were 2 F-16 jet fighters that had located this tiny little Learjet, okay, tiny little Learjet, and they were looking into the cabin of the jet and could see that they were unconscious. The pilots, were both unconscious, okay. Within 20 minutes, there were 4 jet fighter interceptors, in escort of that plane, okay, and they just escorted it till it crashed into some hill somewhere, ran out of fuel, But the point being is, if one little Learjet goes off course after 10 minutes and goes off course by 2 degrees, 5 great big lumbering huge passenger planes that navigate on what are called Victor Skyways that don't deviate whatsoever off those Victor Skyways, deviated off those Victor Skyways, wandered around the countryside, and nobody could find them. So they smacked into 2 of the biggest buildings in America, and then attacked Washington, and nobody could find them.
Well, speaking of airplanes, what were those? People said they had seen these strange white airplanes flying around the towers a little while earlier, and then I think around the Pentagon, if I remember correctly, people saw this.
I don't. Yeah, I don't remember. All I know is that somebody said, "Hey, look at the film footage of some camera that showed supposedly the plane striking the Pentagon."
That was a plane.
You got that right. Not that I saw, because I've seen high speed. In my business of intelligence, I know high speed cameras when I see them. Okay, and all I saw was a silver blur smacking the side of the building. Okay, period. That's all I saw. All right.
What happened to the wings of the airplane, supposedly, that hit the Pentagon? Did they just disintegrate in midair? I mean, it was a giant hole like you would see in a foreign country that was being bombed. It was just a giant hole. I would think that the wings would leave some kind of indentation in the giant building right where Rumsfeld papers were kept.
Well, the odd thing is there were 7 rings of defense, air defense around the Pentagon. 7 rings of air defense. I mean, a butterfly couldn't even, flap its way into, the Pentagon without getting picked off by some super duper, air defense system. ADA is what they call them. All right. Now, all of a sudden, a big, lumbering, heavily loaded, fully loaded airplane can fly right up to the thing unchallenged and not be intercepted. Say what? And they already knew it was coming. They had already had a warning, supposedly, that this plane is on the way, and they still didn't detect that plane and destroy it. Something really smells bad here. Okay, in Denmark, I think is what they say. Something thinks in Denmark or something like that. So,
and then you have the cameras. Mm-hmm. This is the Pentagon, and they have the security cameras. There's only one working.
Well,
mysteriously, they just stopped working as well. I guess I don't
know. Well, when Cheyenne Mountain goes down, the first time in its entire history they shut it down for that morning for testing. Oh, please. I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid. Okay, all right. Guess who fought? And boy, the Bush family doesn't get away with this one. Okay, do you know who pulled out all the stops to prevent a congressional commission on the 9/11 investigation from happening? Guess who pulled? Moved heaven and earth to stop that thing. I mean, 3,000 Americans had just been annihilated and incinerated. Okay, wiped off the face of the earth. And guess who worked harder than anybody to prevent that investigation from happening? I'll tell you. I'll tell all your listeners. George W. Bush. That's who did. And then when it was finally ran through that they had to investigate, can you imagine that? Kind of like a Warren Commission kind of sort of thing with Kennedy. And when they, exactly. And my take too. When they finally got through, guess who stepped on the evidence completely? I mean, talk about some bad heroin in Southeast L.A. Okay, being stepped on. Man, that commission was, that commission report was stepped on to where, gosh, you read the thing and hardly anything bad happened. Instead of more people died in 9/11 than died at Pearl Harbor. Mm-hmm. Okay, and there's George W. Bush making sure that no investigation was to happen. Why wasn't he investigated for that alone? Is my take. Why wasn't he held accountable alone for impeding the investigation into why 3,000 Americans were incinerated, torn to pieces, in one of the most horrible passions?
Probably because he had America all behind him to go to war, so nobody was paying attention to anything that was going on here, because we were all too busy at the time watching the television 24/7, going over into Iraq, where I don't think that's where Osama bin Laden was, but I could be wrong. That's why nobody was paying attention. So
no. Osama bin Laden, and his brother was in business with George Bush Sr. Mm-hmm. Okay, H.W. Bush. Okay, the Bush family has been invested with the bin Ladens for years and years. All right. Did anybody notice, or am I the only one to notice this, is that Osama bin Laden, okay, the guy who just attacked America, did all this horrendous stuff that we were warned about. Abel Danger warned us. Anthony Schaefer warned us. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They didn't have an exact date. That was it. And, that was it. They said within 18 months, and it was attacked within, 14 months, okay? And so, does anybody think it's strange that one of the tallest Arabs on record, 6'4", whatever bin Laden was, okay, a scion of one of the wealthiest families in the Middle East, okay, one of the greatest known terrorists in the world, and in Afghanistan when he was there, virtually every gem hunter, okay, that was there looking for gems, knew exactly where he was at any given time because he had a 2,000-person retinue, okay, following him around, consuming very limited resources, okay, in Afghanistan. Everybody knew where he was except for the Americans. How did that happen? How did that happen? I've never had these, I work in the business, of finding out these things, and I've never had it explained to me, okay,
well, they knew very well where he was when they wanted to support the Mujahideen. When the Soviets were engaged in the battle for Afghanistan, right? So they knew where to find him back then, didn't they?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, as I've always said, Al-Qaeda was organized, it was structured, it was led, it was trained, it was educated, it was logistics, it was armed, okay, it was transported, it was even visaed by America, okay? Now, at what point did they all of a sudden become super terrorist group? I don't know, okay? I really don't. When I hear that the now director of the Central Intelligence Agency, John Brennan, ordered their visas stamped over his second-in-command who said, do not stamp these visas, station chief. That's what his title was, station chief in Jeddah. Do not stamp these visas. And John Brennan said, you either stamp the visas or you're fired. And the guy resigned instead of stamping the visas. And it's funny, you don't ever hear about that episode. But what happens now? Our government turns right around and makes John Brennan, Mr. Rectal Rehydration, John Brennan, head of the director of the CIA. Director of the CIA,
Right.
I mean, what can you say? He's got dirt on somebody. That's how he got it. Of course, he's got dirt. Okay. When I hear that the Bin Laden family was they had the only plane to fly out of America.
Exactly.
24 hours after 9/11. Okay, who's got dirt on who here? Who's running this country?
Was just going to bring that up. That they kind of slid that in there too, while everybody's all gung ho on going to war. They slide out the family of Bin Laden real quick, but the airspace was shut down, so they can get out.
The airspace was shut down.
Right. The only thing allowed to fly that day, as has been mentioned several times on several different platforms, is some military flights, and members of the Bin Laden family were allowed to spirit themselves outside of the U.S. Now,
that should have been the first clue.
Well, that's the first clue that they're full of crap regarding the narrative. Because, look, let's be honest. If you are going to look for somebody and you can't find them, which I don't buy anyway, but let's just say you can't find them, who are you going to ask where they might be? Well, you'll ask their wives.
They were witnesses. The Bin Laden family were witnesses to a crime.
Right.
Okay, and nobody, including the FBI, will take responsibility about that plane flying out. Oh, like I said, clearly, people that were supposed to be in charge of this country were not in charge of this country. All right, clearly nobody knew who was in charge of this country. But I'll tell you right now who I think it was, and it was who else? Who else could put all this stuff together and have all these groveling little bureaucrats kiss their butt? And that was Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld. Obviously not that twerp George W., okay?
Well, he's a moron to top all morons, as far as I'm concerned.
I can't believe these Republicans now, like I read some comments today, these comments that said, oh, yeah, well, that's what this whole investigation is all about, this CIA thing, is to make George Bush look bad. I don't think he needs any help from anybody making him look bad.
No, that's for sure.
No. I'm sorry. Yes, he did know about the torture. Yes, he did know about 9/11. All right, and all the election rigging and so forth. And now, what do we have? Don't they say you get the politicians you deserve. Well, now we've got Jeb Bush running. Okay. Jeb Bush running for president.
Well, I might be mistaken on this, but didn't Cheney own the corporation that the contractors were going into Iraq? What was that? Halliburton?
Yes, Halliburton, yes. He doesn't own the corporation. He worked, he was the president of Halliburton. And here's something you can put out on your show. The nuclear detonators, okay, those triggers that I am really concerned about being used on our own people. Am I the only one in America that's concerned about this? I'd really like to know. Okay, well, George W. Bush ordered those to be manufactured from Los Alamos, New Mexico. All right, those special triggers they're what are called slow burning. Okay, I mean slow burning is microseconds, but slow burning to detonate fissile, dirty material. Okay, as in dirty bomb. All right, you don't have to get something that has to be purified by cascade cyclotrons. That take forever, to produce a bomb. Okay, no, you can just throw a bunch of dirty X-ray equipment into a bin and then throw one of these detonators in with it. You've got a dirty bomb. Okay, well, George ordered that. First thing he did was order that Los Alamos produce these. Admiral Tom Lopez specifically presided over the entire process. He resigned Los Alamos, New Mexico, and he took those 15 to 20 nuclear detonating pits to Iraq, courtesy of Halliburton Logistics. All right? Does anybody see this a pattern forming here? Okay. Halliburton Logistics took those nuclear detonators into Iraq along, although Halliburton didn't do this, Carlisle did this, took weapons of mass destruction. So great. Just one big happy family here. Where's the FBI? Yeah, by the way, the FBI was informed of all this. Okay? The FBI knows every single, aspect that I told you on your show from your listeners. They have been informed of this. All right? It took 3 weeks to debrief the FBI, and they were completely informed of everything that I've told your listeners. All right? They know about this. They know about the weapons of mass destruction in Syria. They know about these detonators. They know everything there is to know about what went on in Iraq when I was there. And they even informed me that they had the same issues in Guantanamo about prisoner abuse. And, and to show you how out of control things were, there was a General Jeffrey Miller. Okay, Jeffrey Miller. Have you heard of him? Jeffrey Miller, Crazy Jeff? Jeffrey Miller.
That one slips by me a little bit. Just to let you know something right now, Mr. Ford, yeah. I have tried to add 3 or 4 callers here, and for some reason I can't do it. This is not Kim's fault, everybody. I don't know what's going on, but for some reason it just won't add them in. So.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, okay.
Just go ahead.
Well, I'd love to get some questions from your callers. Because it's hard to gauge, if people are listening and they're understanding what you're saying, unless they give you feedback, So, I learned that intelligence, and like I brief something that, like to a commander, and then the commander would turn around and ask me the stupidest question I'd ever heard. I thought, what did I just stand up here for a half hour, 45 minutes, explaining, so I always have to get feedback, it's really important. So, I hopefully your listeners can get their questions either send in like on a chat room or text in even, for that matter. But I'd love to have some questions from your listeners.
Well, how come we can't?
We're working on it. Everybody keep trying. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, but I will fix it if it's fixable.
Okay. Well, what we can do is let's find out what it takes to get it fixed, and I can come back on your show. Hey, I'd love to come back on your show if you guys want to have me back.
No, absolutely. We can definitely do this again, either on my show or Kim's show, because this is Kim's show you're into, which is Jaded, everybody. I was just explaining why I was having these troubles here and telling everybody sorry that I didn't get you in, but keep trying because I will add you. If it comes up on the thing, I'll bring it up. So go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to let you know that somehow I'm having trouble bringing people on.
Okay, I'll bet that's NSA. I'll bet that's what they're doing. So hey, a little intrigue. And I'll come back anytime if I can be allowed to talk about my favorite subject matter, and that's me. Nobody loves to talk about me more than me. So anyway, no, it's always a pleasure. But there's some things I need to get out there. I want to get out there, and like I say, I'm in direct communications with the senator, Feinstein, and like I say, Brigadier General Janice Karpinski will back me up 100% on all of this. All right, because she paid a price for it herself. All the stuff that has happened, and as of last week, when Ashton Carter, the new Secretary of Defense, he will be. He's not confirmed yet, but he will be. Okay.
I just want to tell you, Mr. Ford, we added a caller in, area code 313.
Oh.
Hey, what's going on, Fred?
Oh, yes.
Hello.
Hi, who's this?
This is Rads.
Hey, Rads.
Rads, you have any questions for Mr. Ford?
I mean, it all sounds pretty familiar. I mean, I was wondering if you could inform us about the use of depleted uranium during the war as well.
Okay, I didn't hear that question. Boy, the audio was really tough on that.
Sorry, he was asking.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You want to ask again, Rad? Sorry.
Yeah, I was wondering about the use of depleted uranium during the war on Fallujah and things of that nature too, as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. Your name is Rad? That's what came across, Rad?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's DU. Do you want to hear a little bit about DU?
Right? Oh, yeah. I mean.
Okay. All right. We were on our way into, and this is what the first exposure that I had to DU, and it concerned me. I was the only medic for the group, and my intelligence group, and so issues like depleted uranium exposure on today's battlefield are a big issue. They're a big issue. And when we came into southern Baghdad, and there was probably between 200 to 300 incinerated, Russian vehicles. Well, they were Russian designed, Iraqi armored, tanks, personnel carriers, and they were all smoking. Okay, and of course, like I said, I didn't go to war with exactly a bunch of Fulbrights. Okay. A bunch of Rhodes Scholars. No, I went to war with some of the stupidest people I've ever met. And so we stopped because our way was blocked by several burning tanks. And the first thing the guys wanted to do was jump out of their vehicles, go run up and jump on top of the tanks and peer into, with smoke boiling out of the turrets, to peer inside, see what was inside. Okay. And I noticed that most of the tanks, there wasn't any outward sign of destruction on them. There was just maybe something about the size of a quarter, a hole the size of a quarter in the turret. And that was the only indicator to show that those tanks or those armored vehicles had been struck. And all I could think of was when I read about depleted uranium is that if it's around something hot, depleted uranium is used in the warheads of all of our aircraft that attack, like a ground support aircraft, Apaches and so forth that attack, armored vehicles, and DU is what's used, okay, and the A-10 Thunderbolt, they call it they call it the Warthog, 20 millimeter guns, okay, those have DU in their 20 millimeter warheads, and their rounds, and so. All it takes is just a little bit of depleted uranium in the smoke, in the heat, and you get around it or breathe it or get it on your camouflage like we did. Okay, yes, you are exposed to DU, and yes, you do need to be checked. If there's any doubt in your mind that you might have had exposure to DU, you need to, start the process. It's a long process to be screened for it, but you need to get in. Or if you know somebody that needs to get in and get screened for it, yes, absolutely, positively, get them in. Don't sit there and say, well, I'll wait till something shows up. Like cancer, okay, it will show up if you were exposed to DU. It will show up. So that is what my recommendation is for DU.
I just added Vincent to the table as well. Hey, Vince, you there?
Hey, Kim, good evening. Hi,
hey.
Chuck, Mr. Ford, Rads, and Shawley looks like he dropped off. Good to be in with you guys this evening.
Thank you.
Chuck, you guys, you're awesome, dude. You're doing a great job. Kim, you're fantastic. Your the second show out, you're doing great. Mr. Ford, I would like to come in and just go ahead and set some questions straight from folks in chat. That way, maybe well, probably not, but we ain't going to get them off Chuck's back. But Chuck's getting the frontal assault here. First of all, whether I agree or disagree with you is of no relevance whatsoever because that doesn't change facts. What you may or may not know to any amount of degree does not change your credibility. And just because we all don't have the same understanding doesn't mean that we are not on the same side. So that being premised, I'm not saying anything yay or nay about whether I do agree with you because personally I find this a fascinating discussion listening to you. And but some people are questioning because you're not saying anything about the dancing Israelis. But let me just ask you. Now, obviously, 9/11 was an inside job. We've got that established. I think some of the questions were, are you not aware of the way the world works, okay? Which is basically the coalition between the corporatocracy of the United States and the Israeli PAC, the Zionists. Khazar pigs and Americans who run the world.
Well, Vince, I think that's Vince.
Yes,
that's
yes.
Correct. Okay, all right, Vince. Now, it's always hard to have a global corporate discussion, of what's of business translation when you're standing in the bunker, okay. And it's 130 degrees in the bunker, and you're looking at weapons of mass destruction with bills of lading from one corporation to another, swinging the transfer of those weapons that are supposed to be illegal, that we're not supposed to be there, and you're standing there in the country that was not supposed to be using these weapons. Okay, it's really tough to come up with a line of thought on the interactions of corporations that were not supposed to be breaking the law and not supposed to be murdering 100,000 people.
Mr. Ford, let me interrupt you there. Most people here would agree that there were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq, and it was all a lie to take us to war.
Can I add to something here? Do you guys not consider the use of nuclear weapons a war crime itself, or those are the weapons of mass destruction because they kill people for billions of years after you're done using them? It's like throwing your radioactive waste in another country without paying any fees or fines or going about any laws or environmental anything. It just kills anything biological. It mutates in genetics forevermore. Wouldn't you say that's the weapon of destruction, of mass destruction on this?
I could agree with that, and I think, like Mr. Ford said, that these biological weapons, used against Kurds, and previously, I think, weren't they using them against Iran at one point in time? Back, when what was that in the 70s during their war?
Right. You have to keep things in context, Vince. You ask like with the Israelis, okay? I'm not dancing around the fact that Israel, had representatives there. I mean, but the thing is, you don't have a whole lot of time to put together a dissertation on Israeli involvement, in Iraq with the United States when you see somebody in passing in the Combat Information Center. All right. When my boss said she challenged somebody from Israel that was in her building that she had command of, and they told her to go pound sand and don't bother them, okay? And if she had a problem with it, go contact Washington. I mean, what can you say? What can you say, Vince? What can I say to that? You know, I mean, that very clearly Israel was involved, all right?
Thank you, because you know what, I think I've not been missing too much of what you've been saying, and I'm not knocking anybody in chat, but they were kind of goading about, you know, that you weren't fully aware. And like you said, I believe when you're in the trenches, man, you ain't got time much for politics, you know. No atheist, as they say in the foxhole, right?
Well, this is the thing. He's talking about what he saw, you know, and what he's aware of. Now, this is not necessarily about the global conspiracy. That might not be self-evident to him standing there in a bunker in Iraq. You know, the part of it that he sees is corporate interaction. Okay, so he can see that part of it. He can verify that part of it. So what he's telling you, I think, and what the reason why I kind of didn't really go into it was because, look, this guy's not going to know exactly who's funding who all the way around. You know, he's got part of the story in his hands, right?
That's correct. And I didn't go into war. I didn't go to war thinking, oh, gosh, what, is Israel going to be involved? And plus, when you're standing in a Muslim country that hates Israel, the last thing you want to do is wave a red flag, you know, concerning, you know, the Star of David, okay? I mean, you know, you just don't want to deal with that. And, you know, and several times, you know, Vince, I spent a lot of time in a building that it was attacked at least 5 times a night, okay? At least 5 times a night we had rockets, mortars, machine gun fire directed on the building. I mean, plaster was falling out of the ceiling all night long because of the concussion. So you don't have a lot of time when you're in that situation to sit there and think about geopolitics, or, you know, or what part Israel would play. Hey, I assume that they played a big part because Israel has had an ongoing, you know, contest with Iraq for a long time. I mean, they were the ones that bombed the Osiris nuclear reactor in the first place. Okay, and they have been giving the U.S. you know, critical intelligence in the Middle East for a long, long time, since their inception. So that's not my job to figure that out. My job was to get intelligence that would protect our fighting men, our fighting forces in Iraq. Okay, and that's what I was attempting to do.
I'm certainly not questioning, you know, your heart or you know where your heart's at in this. Many people are becoming aware that we're fighting a war for the corporatocracy, and it's unfortunate that, as y'all said earlier, you know, it's the youngsters paying the price.
Well, did you hear my whole show, Vince?
Yes, I've been listening.
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. I've got the link that Chuck posted for your first show. I guess I had missed that, so that's on my to listen list on YouTube. And matter of fact, I'll go grab that and drop it off into chat for anybody else that would like to listen, because I didn't hear it, but I have been listening all night.
The point I want to get across, Vince, to everybody is now more than ever we are in a very dangerous position because our own politicians have put us in this position right now. Okay, we just lost thousands in Iraq. It was one of the longest ground wars in U.S. history, and we are about to lose a whole lot more people. And on top of everything else, these people that we're fighting, they are tough. They are beyond anything that we can imagine, and they really want to die fighting us, and they really want to detonate nuclear weapons with us to go up in smoke, all right? So the issues of nuclear fallout and so forth, these are going to be real issues. These are going to be real problems because I guarantee, unless we do something within the next 12 calendar months, you are going to see a nuclear detonation in Iraq on that border, probably the Iranian-Iraq border, okay, and you're probably going to see Americans involved, okay, because they're sitting right at the Baghdad airport right now. There's 10, right now in Syria, did you know that there's 10,000 American troops that specialize in NBC, what's called nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons? they're trying, in a desperate search to find those weapons of mass destruction. Most people don't know that. Okay, that is happening as we speak. That's what I'm concerned about, is not getting any more troops killed in a war that is based on manufacturing and making profits for groups like the Carlyle Group or the Halliburton Group. All right.
Well, with that being said, okay, Mr. Ford, would you encourage anybody to join the military now, based on what you've experienced and what you just said about nuclear?
What do you think, Kim?
Well, I would certainly say no, but
I wouldn't. I would not. Okay. I mean, given the fact that ISIS now has said very clearly that they really will do anything they can to get a rematch with the U.S. Okay. Do you want to see? I don't want to see any more American troops, kneel down and get their heads sawn off. Okay, on CNN. I don't want to see it. Okay, especially over these issues. Okay.
Now I need to ask. Let me ask you a question that is obviously going to come in chat now. Since it's just a slight delay, but ISIS is no more than a continuation of the creation of the CIA. You have any information on that?
Well, oh gosh, okay, boy, all these extenuations and extrapolations. Okay, that's what we do in the intelligence business, is try to figure out what the long-term projections are. Okay, all right, I can believe that. I can believe that with Al Qaeda. There's no question in my mind. Al Qaeda is ours. Okay, always has been. Okay, no question. All right. Now, ISIS, that's made up of thousands of thoroughly pissed off fighters that really don't care about subtle, covert, incestuous relationships like that. They have one thing in mind, okay? That's what makes them dangerous. They have one thing in mind, and they're going to do it, okay? Now, obviously they're suing. Obviously, they're being paid by Saudi Arabia. Okay, Saudi Arabia is footing the bill. Prince Bandar, remember Bandar Bush? Okay, well, Prince Bandar is cutting the check. Bin al-Turki is directing the intelligence effort of ISIS, and every time ISIS conquers a town, they bring in select Sharia-appointed Saudi Arabian judges, okay, to apply Sharia law as they see fit. Okay, it's the toughest. There's 11 levels of Sharia law, and they apply at the top level. Okay, in Iraq. Okay, so I don't know if you can draw something from that or not, but sure, now the thing that makes ISIS so dangerous, as I said on the show 2 or 3 times, is they have the database. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi ran Mukhabarat in Samarra. All right? I don't know how much clearer I can make it how dangerous this group is. They're not just crazies running around with chainsaws. Okay? They're crazies running around with the latest and greatest intelligence information. Okay? That is available. Okay? They know exactly what they're doing, which makes them 10 times more dangerous than this crazy. Okay.
Raz, do you have anything you want to say? You've been sitting quiet, and I want you to have a chance as well.
Well, I think the whole ISIS deal it's obviously a well put together plan. It's part of a military operation. It's so obvious if you look at it. Is you always send a force into a country to cause chaos before you invade, or you get them addicted to drugs and things like that. We did it in Iraq before we went there. A lot of the truth, when we first invaded Iraq, we invaded with unarmored Hummers, and we took over a country within a week or so because the population's so disorganized, the information's not there, or the people that are there, they just wouldn't believe what you're telling them anyway because they're drug addicts. It's like if you took out the electricity out of a major city for a couple weeks and then you invaded, everybody would be almost hopeless because they're out of resources. And that's just the way society today is designed.
is true.
Well, and it's also it's also a useful way of conducting what's called surrogate warfare to turn around and embrace, embolden, and support an asset like an ISIS, which does have probably in its ranks plenty of legitimately pissed off people, but at the same time, the head of it, I bet, is at this point part of the controlled opposition, where they've introduced it to in order to create exactly the effect it's created in the area it's in. You know, that's not out of the realm of possibilities, and that's what I think is going on, is that it was absolutely erected for that purpose.
Personally, if you want my opinion, I think this is all preparation for the lines for World War III, to be completely honest with you.
Well,
I think that's a bingo right there, Mr. Ford. I think that's what it is. It's obvious. It's a manipulation of setting up a great future war, and it's going to be pretty scary. It's going to be very scary. Well, and these people are... I would not want to live under Sharia law, and certainly, you know, we're supposed to be talking about freedom here, and we're forcing extremists and people to take sides, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in.
Well, as I'm the only person that I know of who is not a member of ISIS that has not only had met but recruited Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, all right, when he was in Samarra, and my first issue with him was the location of Jessica Lynch. I know what kind of person he is, and you know, I can tell you that they are not above using any tactics that work, and they knew it. They didn't hit those weapons and those armor depots for no reason. Okay, when they came in over the top of Iraq and then swung south, they were going for those armor depots intentionally. They knew they were there. All right. So I saw ISIS last week, pictures of ISIS driving in vehicles much better than I ever drove in when I was in Iraq. I never drove in an up-armored vehicle. They're all in up-armored vehicles now. They have artillery now. They have everything they need now. All right? They're unstoppable. They are here to stay. We're not going to defeat them. All right?
Yeah, it looks to me like, you know, that they've been pretty much supplied with initiative, like you were speaking about in the last few hours, torturing these people in the manner they tortured them. You know, it's... you know, great insult to grab an Arab by his beard with your left hand, right? I'm talking about wiping in chat right here. Anyways, I really appreciate what you have to say, and I've found it very, very interesting, and look forward to listening to the first broadcast you and Chuck had. I appreciate what you did and where you stand in your heart, brother.
Well, like I said, you know, obviously our own people that wanted to hide all this corporate involvement. Okay. Now, I don't know if you heard that part, but the people that strapped me to a stretcher and tortured me, okay, they are now working for one of the companies that brought those weapons of mass destruction to Iraq. All right. They are working for them right this instant. As I'm saying this, they are working for them. They're working for the subsidiary of Booz Allen Hamilton, okay, of the Carlyle Group. All right. So, you know, my take on this is going to be a little different than most people that, you know, hearing the show for the first time. But I've spent, you know, 10 years, including my time, which was very eventful when I was in Iraq, gathering all this information. I didn't start out that way. I actually had my retirement orders in. My retirement papers were in. And when I came back, I was going to retire after 30 years of being in the military, being in the intelligence field. I was going to retire. Okay, I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't think that I was going to be strapped to a stretcher and tortured and interrogated. I didn't think that for a second. But my take now is on how we do things, especially in wartime, is completely changed, as you might imagine. So I do have a complete perception. And if you want to see my perception, go ahead and look at my court case in California. Okay, it's in the Ninth Circuit Court. Home of Senator Dianne Feinstein. That is her district. And you can read my court case. If you want to see something entertaining about how our government goes to war, read my court case.
Do you have any links for that I could share with everybody listening? And I'm going to go quiet from here on out. If you'll just give me a minute. I wanted to say thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Kim. Chuck, you get mentioned. I've been doing Cancer Kickers these last several weeks, and you get mentioned regularly. I like to affectionately call my tongue-tied the Ochelli Effect Award. And so, anyways, you're great, man. And Kim, you're doing awesome. And Mr. Ford, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And I certainly, I know I did put you on the spot some, but that was my intent. I hope that those listening in chat are satisfied with your fidelity. I certainly am. And I appreciate what you're going through.
Well, sir, it's like this. You could not put me on the spot as much as our American government did when I was trying to do the right thing, for our troops. And so nothing could ever surpass what they did to me. All right. So, hey, feel free to ask me any questions when I'm on a show. Hey, I appreciate any questions concerning what happened and what is going on now, because ask those questions and maybe we can save some more lives, in this situation that we're facing.
Right on. Thanks, you guys. I'm going to hang up.
All right, thanks,
you.
Vince.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Vince.
Thanks, Chuck.
All right. Rad's here. I got another question for you. Could you tell us about the alarming suicide rate among vets from the last decade of war? You know anything about that?
Sure. It'd be my pleasure. Okay, Raz. Now, I've got two situations I deal with on a regular basis. One is the suicide issue. Since we're losing, and what is it, between 9 and 10 to 12 soldiers a day to suicide still. Okay, we have lost more soldiers to suicide than we've lost to the enemy. Okay, why that is not sending alarms through our government and shaking our government right to its foundation, I don't know. Okay, I simply don't know. Why the media is not covering it more than they are, I don't know. But that suicide rate has never been that dramatic before. I mean, soldiers always come back depressed, and quite often, unfortunately, they kill themselves.
Well, it's unfortunate, but they're considered damaged goods. And that's the problem. And it shouldn't be that way.
Yes.
We should take care of them for the rest of their lives. And we don't.
I'm certainly damaged goods. I'll be the first to admit it, that I'm damaged goods. And when I saw the letter that George W. Bush sent to the VA saying, please, we've got to save money. Don't treat these people that are coming back from war. That immediately detonated a trigger for me. Okay, that triggered a detonation for me. Okay, on that issue of trying to stop. Can you imagine how parents feel when their child goes off to war to fight a war against terrorism, and they come back and our own government won't support that troubled child? Obviously, it doesn't take any kind of psychiatrist, psychologist, or medical expert to realize when a loved one is in danger. Okay, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And these families are calling up right and left. Do something. We don't know what to do for them. Do something. Okay, and it's not being done because of the rate's not slowing up as far as I can tell. So
can I add something here?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've had to kind of come to grips with is that in our society we have video games and so forth that glorify war, certainly, but we don't have a what's the word called, a third world mindset when it comes to dealing with issues like causing people pain, like in a real room when you can smell urine and fear and you're causing pain to somebody, like torturing them. Okay, as far as I can tell, that psychological effect is overwhelming, especially to American society kids that are going to fight these wars. They just don't have it. It's never been part of their cultural makeup. And so they're coming back with these memories, like I had. I had horrendous nightmares, unbelievable nightmares, okay, as a result. Okay, and if I had them, you can bet some kid that doesn't have any experience in the military sees somebody being tortured, okay, and remembers it. Yes, they do bring that with them. That becomes part of their muscle memory, so to speak. And
what did you want to say, Rats?
Well, my question is you think after the war that they do help the Marines by sending them to a psychiatrist just like they did to you, strap you up in a chair and drug you up. They give out these pills, Xanax and all that affects their mindset even more to the point they commit suicide, probably because they don't want to pay their pension or anything else because they're done using them, so they have to dispose of you. And that's pretty much how they think.
Well, I think there is something to that. I don't know if it would be quite put in that way, but but I think there is something to that. The system wants you to go to war. They want you to go do what you're supposed to do, and when you come back, you better shut up about it and just get on with your life. All right, that's what I've seen, and unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so the other issue. If I might just kind of segue out, away from the suicide thing, I believe this is part of it. Is the new Agent Orange? For those of us who can remember Agent Orange in Vietnam, okay, the new Agent Orange, and I am dealing with this as I file the first reports of something called the burn pit syndrome. Okay, the burn pit syndrome is out there, and we need to get the word out. Okay, about the burn pit syndrome. It sounds, gee, how interesting could that be? Well, okay, I'll use my case as the first example. All right, we entered Balad from the southeast. We entered, there were piles of burning papers and so forth, documentation. Okay, that the Iraqis had left. Well, the commanding officer, okay, who we all know about now through me talking about him. He decided that the pile of chemical warfare rubber suits, Russian rubber suits that were soaked in sarin. Everybody knows what sarin is, correct? Okay,
yeah.
Soaked in sarin. Okay, yeah. He decided that those were going into a pit and they were going to be burned because he didn't want to deal with the issue of weapons of mass destruction evidence, being there where he would have to explain that. Okay, all right. So there weren't supposed to be any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? Except for these Russian chemical suits soaked in sarin, all right? So I received the orders, because I was the medic, to take those suits, put them into a pit, and light those on fire, okay? Now, like I said, I'm dumb, but I'm not stupid, okay? You light a rubber suit soaked in a nerve gas, one of the most lethal nerve gases known, next to VX, and what's going to happen? That smoke is going to go straight up in the air, and then drop right back down into the camp, which it exactly did. And to where right now you've got 20-something-year-olds, okay, like at Balad alone, the Air Force Base, you have 20-year-olds that are coming down with 4 and 5 and 6 different kinds of cancers that they can't even explain what those cancers are. The doctors, okay, are trying to figure out how to classify these new kinds of cancers that are coming back from Iraq. Okay, they can't, and these are lethal cancers. Okay, and so the warning flag went up, and you think our command would say, "Oh gosh, we can't be doing this." Okay, we should be, who cares about a little bit of smoke? Now, when I was handed the flare to throw onto these chemical suits that had been soaked in sarin and diesel, okay, they handed me the flare. I turned around to light the flare. I turned around to see the commanding officer and his staff hoofing it down the road. Okay, they were running as fast as they could. So that gives you an idea that yes, we knew that burn pit issue was going to be dangerous. Okay. So right now we've got thousands and thousands of troops walking in to the VA with 5 and 6 different kinds of oncology, undescribed cancers, okay, that nobody can figure out where they came from and how they got there. But those burn pits burned for 10 years. And I'd come back to my tent back in Balad. I'd pull the tent flap back, and there would actually be smoke from those burn pits inside my tent. Okay? So, that's the next biggest issue to come up, is why are troops killing each other, okay, and killing themselves, and why are these troops coming back with these exotic, lethal kinds of cancers? Okay? Those are the big issues now. And as I tell people that will listen, if you have somebody that came back or that's come back that is clearly not right, okay, clearly in trouble, get them to the VA quickly. All right? Don't be embarrassed, or don't think that you're ratting them out somehow. Get them to the VA. That's what I say on all of this stuff. Get them to the VA. The VA is being very, very good. In spite of the bad PR that they've gotten recently, they have been exceptional, okay, in dealing with these issues.
I just want to let you all know that we have about a little over 5 minutes left, so if there's anything, Raz, you wanted to add before my music comes in?
Yeah, but it's kind of a big question, so I don't know if I should ask it.
Well, ask it, and maybe Mr. Ford can give you a toned-down version, maybe. If you ask it, maybe Mr. Ford can just give you a toned-down version.
Yeah, I would say probably it relates back to just the morphing of our military. I would say happened after about World War II, and I think we've been corrupted by Nazi science ever since then. Most of our agencies and corporations revolved around that, and I think that's the origin of corruption of the whole rotten apple America situation we have today. Any afterthoughts of that, or you don't have a clue what I'm talking about?
I'll try not to give you a dissertation here, Raz. Okay, it's hard for me not to on this stuff, but okay, yes, you're absolutely correct. World War II was the watershed. Okay, that's when bad things started to happen, because it became apparent to our corporate leaders, okay, that yes, big money through war profiteering could be made, and war became business. All right, it became the catalyst of good business. All right, and so all of a sudden you start seeing things like testing, like Montauk Point, New York. You start seeing, whole populations being tested. You start seeing light bulbs full of chemical warfare agents being thrown in the subways in New York City. Okay.
And radiological.
In World War II. I'm sorry?
And radiological testing upon the civilian population.
You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah. Because we didn't know about radiation back then. So instead of doing it in a controlled environment, they tested on our population. They tested on soldiers.
The thing is it's documented. They knew exactly what was going to happen, because the lady who discovered radiation, Madame Curie, died because of it.
No, oh yeah, you're absolutely correct. But these people had made weapons. Okay, they wanted to study the effects of weapons. Madame Curie wasn't sure what exactly that they had on their hands. Okay, with their discovery of radium. Okay, but the thing is new weapons were being made. New weapons to kill millions of people, and they wanted to figure out how to kill millions of people even faster. All right, and so hence you saw all the testing and so forth. And in the South Pacific, and White Sands, New Mexico. I mean, all these places. That's where you saw all the testing. When they ordered entire companies of troops to stand up, okay, and take their goggles off, with a big blast, with one of the hydrogen, bomb blasts. Okay, I mean, what's that going to do? What could that possibly do? But harm people.
The nanoparticles of radiation to the population. So the cancer rate goes up, disease rate goes up, and then they developed something called the Surgeon General, which take care of all the medical documents and all that. So it's like their first computerized system of monitoring what they're doing on the fly. Like I said, it's the start of a corporatocracy and all that. And they started a behemoth ever since the Manhattan Project.
Well, you see what's happening right now. Fukushima, okay, the radiation from Fukushima is only 400 miles away from the Oregon coast. Hanford, Washington, is one of the hottest places of radioactivity on the Earth. On the Earth, all right. Los Alamos, they've got so many exotic radiation cancers coming out of Los Alamos now, that it's almost like the burn pit syndrome. Okay, obviously our government doesn't care. Okay, they don't care. They just call up the U.S. Attorney's Office and say, "Hey, keep this thing out of court. We don't want to pay," and the U.S. Attorney's Office will do it. So I hate to say it, but yes, we are in dire times because we have a government that's out of control. I mean, I just asked Dianne Feinstein. She investigates an agency that's under her control, and they spy on her. Okay, they spy on her committee. Okay, well, yes, we have a government that's out of control.
$dollars every year, right?
I'm sorry, Raz.
They get trillions and trillions of our taxpayer dollars to do whatever they want, and they don't have to disclose any of that information either. So who knows what they're do for the 100 years?
You're absolutely correct. As long as they can get away with it, they will get away with it. As long as nobody goes to prison, they will keep doing it. All right? It's just that simple.
I don't want to interrupt you, Mr. Ford, but we have about probably 45 seconds before my music comes in, so I just wanted to thank you for sticking around for my 2 hours, and for Rads for calling in, and Vince for calling in, and to everybody in chat for sticking around.
I certainly appreciate Raz and Vince calling in because it gives me some feedback about how I come across. I can't always tell how I come across to your listeners, so I greatly appreciate Raz and of course to Vince too. So if he's still listening. So anyway, thank you guys for having me so much. It was a pleasure being on your show, and hopefully you'll have me back again.
Absolutely.
If I don't put everybody to sleep.
No, thank you very much, and Raz, thanks again for calling in. I appreciate it. Look, there it is. Good night. We'll see you next weekend.
Good night.